You know that feeling when you see a photo and you just stop? It pulls you in. It feels like a moment from a movie. That's not an accident. It's about 5 specific things. 5 choices you can make with any camera in any location that turn regular photos into cinematic ones. And today I'm going to show you exactly what they are. Fair warning though, this first one is going to feel completely backwards from what you may have been taught, but it's the foundation of the entire look. Cinematic photos live in the shadows. Most traditional photography advice tells you to expose everything perfectly. Make sure you can see all the details. But movies embrace darkness and shadows. They're not trying to show you everything clearly. They're using shadows to create mood, to direct your eye, and to make you feel something. So here's the approach I take. I like to shoot into the shadows. I look for scenes where light is coming from behind or to the side of my subject, where there's clear areas of light and shadow, and I expose for the highlights, which means the shadows stay dark. This is Shibuya Station in Tokyo under construction. A woman is standing on the platform with the street below, and the entire building is torn open around her. Now, intuitively, you might think, it's too dark. I need to brighten everything up so you can see all the details, the construction, the infrastructure, all of it. But that's exactly what would ruin it, because what makes this cinematic isn't what you can see, it's what you can't see. The mystery, the drama of that single shaft of light in all the darkness, and letting the shadows shape the scene. And we'll talk about how to handle this in editing later, because there is a way to bring back just enough shadow detail without killing the mood. But it starts here, in camera, by being willing to underexpose and embrace darkness. Okay, number 2, and this is what a lot of people miss. Cinematic photos aren't about what you're photographing. They're about the world around your subject. The subject here, the people, they're smaller in the frame, but you feel something looking at this photo, right? That's because the environment is helping to tell a story. The hanging lights over the bar, the warm glow, the intimate space. That's what creates the cinematic feeling. The people can be smaller or even absent entirely, but if the environment has atmosphere, character, and mood, the photo works. So when you're out shooting, instead of looking for subjects, start looking for scenes. Ask yourself, does this space have a feeling? Does it have character, textures, colors, lighting? Could I imagine a scene from a movie happening here? And then, here's the key, use your subject to give scale to that world. Show how small they might be in relation to the space. Show them interacting with the environment or another person in the space. The subject and the environment work together to create the scenario in the photo. Okay, number 3 is where you can ruin all the good work you did while shooting, and that's in the edit. Because here's the thing, cinematic photos look believable. They look like real life, just moodier, maybe with a little more punch, but everything is intentional. If you get your lighting right, your editing becomes more stylizing than fixing. You're enhancing what's already there rather than trying to make it something it's not. So here are 3 specific things I do in every edit to keep it cinematic. First, I desaturate. Not black and white, just a little less. Because here's what I've learned. Colors picked up by the camera are almost always too strong for what we're going for. So I pull the vibrance and saturation sliders down, usually by 5 or 10 points, sometimes a little more. Second, I drop the white point in my tone curve. This keeps the brightest parts of the image from being pure white. It keeps everything feeling moody, even the highlights. I'm literally pulling down the top right point of the S-curve just a little bit. It's rare to see pure white in a movie, so this brings your white point down below that and softens the highlights. Third, and this part is crucial, I bring back shadow detail with masking, not global adjustments. Typically, if you wanted to bring back shadow detail, you would just lift the shadow slider, right? But that often kills the mood and muddies everything. Instead, I use targeted masks, radial or brushes, to bring back just enough detail in specific shadow areas. Maybe I want to see a little more of someone's face or the detail in the foreground. I'm not brightening the entire image, I'm selectively bringing back detail. If you need to use the shadows and black sliders, just go very minimal and do any heavy adjustments with masking. The goal with all of this is restraint, subtlety. You're trying to enhance what's already there, not transform it into something else. The edit should be invisible. Anything else you choose to do with color grading, for example, is a stylistic choice. Just remember, the best editing is the editing that you don't notice. All right, number 4, let's get technical for a second. There are 2 settings I always pay attention to when I'm shooting for a cinematic look. First, manual white balance, all the time. If you leave it on auto white balance, your camera is constantly adjusting, trying to make everything neutral. But cinematic photos have color mood. They lean warm or cool or green. A lot of that comes from white balance. Yes, you can change it in post, but dialing the look in camera helps you visualize the final image better when you're on location shooting. White balance does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of color in my final images. So I set my white balance manually, using one of the built-in presets that looks best for the vibe that I want. And second, I expose for the highlights. We talked about embracing shadows before, but from a settings standpoint, this is what I mean. I'm watching my histogram and I'm making sure my highlights aren't blown out. I'd rather have a dark image that I can selectively bring up later than a bright image with blown out highlights, because you can't recover pure white. That information is just gone. So I'm usually shooting a third of a stop to a full stop darker on the light meter, depending on the scene. I'm intentionally underexposing to have the most highlight detail in editing. This helps create a more realistic final look. Most of the time I'm going off what I see in the EVF. I know that I can trust the one in the R5, and the difference between what I see there and what I get back on my computer is pretty minimal. So I expose for how I want the final image to look, which is usually darker. And finally, number 5, composition. And I'm putting this last on purpose because honestly, if you get the first 4 things right, composition is the polish. Literally anything you do will look cinematic if the rest is solid. Composition is what takes it up that final notch. You've probably heard all this before: rule of thirds, leading lines, frame within frames, and yes, that stuff matters. I use rule of thirds. I look for leading lines that draw your eye through the frame. I frame my subjects through doorways or windows or foreground elements. But here's the thing. The difference between a snapshot and a cinematic photo isn't that you followed the rule of thirds. It's that you nailed the mood first, the lighting, the story, the color, and then you composed it well. So yes, use good composition, but don't let it be the only thing you're thinking about. Because a perfectly composed photo with flat lighting and no atmosphere is still just that. It's not gonna have that cinematic flair. The cinematic look is when all 5 of these things come together. Shadow-heavy lighting, environmental storytelling, intentional editing, intentional settings, and solid composition. That's when your photos start feeling like movie stills. And you don't have to nail all 5 in every photo, but if you can get even 3 of these right, your work is gonna feel different. If you want to go deeper on the editing side of this, because that's where a lot of people struggle, I put together a free guide that breaks down my 5 essential Lightroom adjustments, the ones I use on literally every photo. Link is in the description, and it's free. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments what you want to see next. And if you're new here, I make videos about creating photos that have mood and emotion, not just technically perfect shots. So if that's what you're after, hit the subscribe button too. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.